A warm welcome to Kaushalia's UK, Stories from Both Sides, Inspiring and Resilient. And trust me, this evening you will be blown away by the inspiring, life-changing stories and expertise from our speakers that you're going to hear. I'm Carol Edmondson, your host with the mostest. I know I'm cheeky. And I'm an ambassador for Kaushalia UK, and I have been volunteering with this not-for-profit community organisation for, it will be 4 years this month. And let's just say, I have enjoyed tremendously my time with Kaushalia UK, and long may it continue. The CEO and founder of Kaushalia UK is with us here, Ritu Sharma, a Women Empowerment Ambassador. And it was her heart that set up Kaushalia UK, which actually means, Kaushalia means skilled and empowered woman. And yeah, absolutely, Jose, skilled and empowered woman. And the projects include support for victims of domestic abuse, empowering communities, personal and professional development, health and well-being, and as well as the online events, the Stories from Both Sides events. We also run in-person events as well in our local area. And some of those are, we have a Let's Talk Happiness session. Now, who would not want to come to a Let's Talk Happiness session? And we have representation from age group from 40s to 83. And it's just amazing. We get speakers to come in to talk about whether it's mental health, physical mobility. And on Tuesday, there's a craft session where the volunteers actually make things and sell to raise money for DV victims. And then we have dance therapy on a Friday as well for the ladies. So Kaushalia UK and Ritu Sharma, thank you so much for thinking about the needs of the community. Yeah, I am so grateful that we met. Nothing happens by coincidence. So yes, I am so grateful that we met all those years ago. So empowering communities, it's one of the main objectives of Kaushalia UK. And just before we start, I would just like to say some housekeeping. If you're not speaking, please keep your mics on mute and save your questions following each speaker until the final speaker has spoken. And then we'll open up the floor for Q&A, so you can ask your questions, interact with the speakers. So either make a note of your questions as the speakers go along, or put it in the chat, or when we've finished, raise your hand and I will invite you to ask your question. So, kicking us off this evening, we're at that time where we get to hear from our first speaker. Here we go. Introducing Dr. Anna Kohlschmidt, an award-winning industrial psychologist and the thought leader behind the unwritten rules of work. With research implemented at global organizations, including Big Four firms and Ivy League institutions, Anna confronts societal fears and cultural taboos with insightful yet humorous stories. Her work empowers audiences to be agents of cultural change with accountability. With over 8 years of experience, she helps organizations boost performance through powerful conversations about equity and workplace culture. So join us in welcoming Dr. Anna Kohlschmidt, whose mission is to embrace vulnerability and harness authenticity in the professional journey. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate the invitation to be here and the kind introduction. Let me pull this up. And I will just go ahead and everybody can see my slides. Perfect. Thank you for the thumbs up. I always appreciate that. So I'm just going to dive right in and touch base on today's agenda. Our core objective is to leverage our synergies and drill down into those key deliverables that will allow us to move the needle and push the envelope. By ideating outside the box and employing a blue sky approach, we'll be able to shift the paradigm and create a win-win scenario across all verticals. It's crucial that we maintain a laser focus on our critical path, ensuring we have the bandwidth to circle back and close the loop on any points or bottlenecks that may arise. So without further ado, let's take a deep dive into the nitty-gritty and get the ball rolling on this game-changing initiative. Remember, at the end of the day, it's all about moving forward with a solutions-oriented approach and mindset and actualizing our full potential in the marketplace. Let's hit the ground running and make it happen. Does anybody know what I just said? I don't know what I just said. And yet, how many of us have heard something like that, either through audio or receiving an email when you're at work? It seems, at least in my experience, and I've been an external consultant in academia, public and private institutions, I see this all the time. And what I just went through is referred to as corporate jargon or corporate speak. And this is a form of communicating that is expected in corporate culture, but it's not ever taught. I have 3 degrees and I never had a class. I have 3 degrees on work psychology, industrial organizational psychology. There was never a class or a workshop on anything on how to fit in to corporate jobs. This isn't something that's just taught, it's not taught. You're just expected to know. I would call it an unwritten rule. And today, I want to talk to you about my research on the unwritten rules of work for people from low-income backgrounds. And in 20 minutes, I'm not going to have enough time to go over everything, but I want to talk to you about how these shape corporate culture. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the ones that influence communication, because that's one of the #1 business issues for everybody, from nonprofits to schools, organizations. We all could be better communicators, right? Because you can only be 50% of a communication, because the other 50% is how it's received by the other person. So I'm going to tell you about this research, how it ties to the corporate jargon we're talking about, who culture is made for, and more important, who it isn't made for. So I'll go over what I call my favorite buzzword, which is culture, some of the unwritten rules of work, what their impact is, and what we can do about it. So I have never heard an organization claim that they have a bad culture, even in closed doors. And if you Google it, you will see so many news articles about poor culture and lawsuits. And if you Google on websites, you'll see everybody claiming to have a great culture. But we see a lot of turnover lately. We're actually at a really high turnover that's costing the global economy tons of money. In the US alone, in 2019, Gallup estimated it cost businesses $1 trillion in turnover, and turnover has gone up 20% since the pandemic. We are at record low job satisfaction, a record 4-year low. And the global economy, that costs the global economy about $450 billion a year. And on the opposite, places with high job satisfaction have about 30% higher stock price annually. So imagine what you could do with $450 billion in the world just by not being miserable. It seems like a win-win. People are at really stressed out post-pandemic, and even though we have the vaccine now and the rates seem to be going down of COVID cases in a lot of places, people are still very stressed at work, and a lot of the research shows it has a lot to do with their relationship with their leader, and people don't trust their leaders. A global survey found that 61% of people say they trust business leaders, and that's 2% less than they say they trust their government leaders. All of these are not signs that we have healthy work cultures. These are signs of a problem with the culture. And so a message I want to convey is that culture is not just what we say it is. It is what we do. Corporate culture is not what you post on your website. It is what people experience when they're working for you. And when these implicit expectations, these unwritten rules that guide what your culture is, that can be perpetuated through this corporate jargon that many people don't even understand, can lead to negative consequences, such as inauthentic communication. It can actually decrease productivity because miscommunication takes time and causes mistakes. Employees are dissatisfied with it. There's research showing that the more corporate jargon you use, the less people like their leaders. And it undermines the ability for people to really connect and create an empowering workplace. And I think a lot of the issues we face today are because we do not understand one of our own buzzwords, which is culture. So I want to share how I interpret what culture is. And this is an image I made, but it's a mock-up of something that's very popular, the culture iceberg. And many of you have probably seen this, and I think it has its purpose. Its purpose is to show that there are some things that are obvious about a culture, and below the iceberg, the part you don't see is a lot of what makes up the culture. And I think this has merit, but I actually don't like using this example. I think it's a good starting point, but I don't think culture is an iceberg. I actually prefer this other analogy. I like this story, that there are two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What is water?" And I like this story in relation to culture because it reminds me, well, I've never talked to a fish, so I've never considered that they don't think about water. But I know that I don't think about pushing through air every day. But if you took it away from me, I would know instantly. And while I enjoy a good swim every now and then, I can't stay in the water forever. It's not healthy for me. And that is how culture is. Culture isn't the iceberg. Culture is the water. It's what is around us. It is what we know we will be punished if we do not align with. It's what we know we'll be rewarded if we comply with. It's the knee-jerk reactions we don't have to think about. So I'm an American, and for instance, I have never been handed a manual that told me I have to shake hands with someone when I meet them. That did not have to be told to me. I just know it because I've observed it in my culture my entire life. And we have the same in organizations. Organizations have culture, and no matter what is on the website or what is in the all hands meeting or the emails, people are aware of the water, particularly when they are struggling to swim in it. So if the messaging about the culture does not align with what it truly is, this is what it looks like. That the water is great for some, and they think it looks awesome. But for the rest who are struggling, they're not understanding where it is, what's wrong. They're not seeing, it looks inauthentic. And culture is in our unwritten because that water doesn't change just with what we say. And so I'm going to share the research that I did, and I still do, on the unwritten rules of work. And I'll throw myself under the bus here. I initially got into it for a selfish reason. When I started my PhD program in IO psychology, we defined job performance. There are two types: task performance and contextual performance. Task performance is what's in your job, and contextual performance is what all those other things you're expected to do. And I was the kid who was like, excuse me, what are all those other things? Where are those written down if they're not in the job description? And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And I realized part of this was because I was in an academic institution that was a lot different from how I grew up. I did not grow up in poverty, but I am from a very rural area in North Florida. It's very blue collar. And you can see here I'm on top of the 17-foot trailer I lived in for a few years when I was in grad school. And I would leave this trailer every morning and go to college and teach classes. And the unwritten rules of what wasn't written down, I did not know them. There was a different unwritten rules in the trailer park than there are in academia. And on the bottom left here, you'll see me at my first day at Stanford. Those were completely different unwritten rules as well. And I wondered, is it just me or is it everybody else? Because I noticed my colorful Southern sayings weren't taken as well in these environments. Even if I was doing well at my job, nobody else was saying that they were sweating like a sinner in church, for example. Or when somebody got upset, nobody said, "Oh, don't get your panties in a wad. We'll get to it." And I didn't understand why they were so formal. And even at one point, I asked one of my colleagues at Stanford, about one of our leaders, "Why is this man speaking the king's English?" I had never heard anyone say heretofore out loud. I felt like I was hearing ye old English. And I was really frustrated about this. And so I decided to do what I do best, which was research. And so I designed a study and I interviewed Black and white women and men from low-income backgrounds in the US who moved up to higher class backgrounds through the employment. And I chose this population because we already know that racism and sexism has an effect on the employment experience. So I wanted to look at groups that had varying realms in these identities and see if they still had a class change experience, if there were unwritten rules for them and if they differed. And every single one of these respondents said that there were unwritten rules of work for them. Now, what the unwritten rules were and how prevalent they were and what the consequences were, those varied by the groups. And that's a whole nother talk. I can't get to that in 20 minutes. But I want to talk about three of them, three of these unwritten rules that I think have a lot to do with how we communicate at work and why our cultures aren't what we think they are. So the first unwritten rule that they brought up was compliance, which was expecting to not ask questions, to not produce counter ideas, and even if somebody asks your opinion, don't really give it if you're disagreeing with someone in power. I think we've all experienced this to some extent, and that's known as, a lot of it is politics or the corporate game. But this can have a negative impact because let's say somebody asks a question or counters something on a Zoom call and somebody says, and the manager says, let's take this offline. That could be a way to save time and it could be useful if we just don't have time to get in this right now. But if somebody doesn't understand what that means, it could be interpreted as don't ask any questions at all. And that's a dangerous thing, especially if you're trying to be innovative and catch any mistakes. So we always want people to be respectful. And we know that there's a time and a place, and sometimes you have to stay on the agenda. But having some clarity behind that communication can make a big difference with major consequences. The other unwritten rule was the phony socialization, what they called the schmoozing, or some words I probably shouldn't say online because they're profane. They have to do with kissing and having fake relationships. And this was and while corporate jargon's purpose, if you look it up, is to provide a shared language and help people feel unified, research actually shows the opposite, that over half of employees admit to using corporate jargon at work, but a quarter of them say it actually makes them feel more disconnected from their teammates. And because they don't really know what they're saying, they know nothing about each other. And while there's always things that you have the right to keep private from work, if the people don't even know what they're saying when they talk to each other, it can really reduce team performance and reduce trust with each other on the team. The third unwritten rule I want to talk about is the one to speak indirectly instead of directly. And at this point in the talk, you probably know I'm very bad at this rule. I'm very direct. And you can only imagine the interview questions I ask these people. And speaking indirectly, the corporate jargon can be used to try to be what some people call tactful, or to skirt around difficult conversations, which sometimes difficult conversations need to happen. Healthy conflict is a thing. But it can also cause a lot of miscommunication. And there's a study by LinkedIn and Duolingo actually that found that corporate lingo actually reduces productivity because it takes more time that people need clarity, and more mistakes happen when you don't know what someone's talking about. So you got to redo all the work again. And the antidote to this, all of these rules, is, I think, authentic communication. And authentic communication is when individuals feel they can express their true selves, thoughts, and feelings openly and honestly in their interactions with others. And this is a communication style that is found in the leadership framework called authentic leadership. And this is when leaders are open and transparent, they communicate, and they're self-aware, and they care about their relationships with their team. This doesn't mean their team gets whatever they want. It just means that they get answers. They hear no instead of let's circle back and then never hearing again. They know why things are happening, and they're able to ask questions and bring new ideas without being shamed for it. And there are a lot of benefits to authentic communication, such as increased employee engagement and job satisfaction, where I already told us we're at a 4-year low with that, enhanced team performance because people are able to connect better and they trust each other, and there's overall greater organizational trust. So this is a win-win for employees and employers. And so I offer just some counters for these unwritten rules, which is instead of enforcing compliance, whether intentionally or not, I encourage talk with your team about what respectful disagreement looks like, because this varies by culture. Respect in my culture, in working class America, I'm offended when somebody is not direct with me because I feel like, oh, I've done something that you don't trust me to tell me the real answer. I'm offended if you say something nicely, but then you don't follow through. And that's different. So having these conversations with your team so that you can develop a form of communication where you're both respectful is critical for your own well-being and for organizational success. Instead of only phony socialization, you don't need to be prying into people's business, but encourage teamwork. Have team building activities and make sure your team even knows what the language is they're supposed to be speaking. Because if they can't communicate with each other, they can't solve problems. And make sure that when you have these teams working together, that you're rewarding them as a team too, and not only individuals, and that there's not any bullying or harassment, especially in brainstorming sessions. You want people to put forward ideas, even if maybe they need some tweaking without being shamed. That's how we get innovation. And finally, for speaking indirectly, I encourage you to clarify your intent with this, because this can be cultural. It can be to skirt around difficult conversations, but I also know from being in white collar for quite a while now, that sometimes being indirect in your communication and feedback is to encourage your employees to try to find an answer for themselves, to coach them through a process. And if that's your intent, I encourage you to clarify this, because this can be a really big form of mistrust if people feel like you're not answering questions and skirting around issues that could easily be fixed with saying, I'm trying to coach you. I want you to be able to do this one day. I want you to be in my level one day. And that's encouraging the professional development, which is really critical that's one of the number one things millennials and Gen Z look for in new jobs, is places for professional development. So why am I bringing this all up now? I already told you that I think we're at a culture crisis with work. We have really all those issues, low job satisfaction, high turnover. But more than ever right now, we are seeing people want to work at places that align with their ethics. A study by Deloitte showed that almost half of millennials and just about half of Gen Z want to work somewhere that aligns with their ethics. And if their organizations don't, they're willing to walk. If we want to attract talent, we got to be authentic. The people globally are demanding more activism from their organizations, with almost all 89%, 82%, 80%, 79%. These are very large numbers of people who responded, who want CEOs to talk about worker well-being, climate change, discrimination, and ensuring that organizations that are in their communities are also contributing to the communities and keeping them safe and thriving. And we've also seen, particularly in the US in the past 4 years, the rise and fall of DEI, with people demanding DEI and change in organizations. And then there's been backlash in the sentiment that it hasn't worked. And I think a lot of this is rooted in all of the things, the millions and billions of dollars that have been thrown into programs and training and consulting, that we neglected looking at what the water is. We caught up in what is the message and how do we fit this into what is already here. And the water looks like this, where the water is still the same, but now there's maybe a flag on the boat. And that this doesn't have the change and the impact. It's not authentic in a way that people want to see right now. And how do we improve this? At the very least, I think we need to be transparent about what the unwritten rules of our workplace are. And ideally, we rewrite them together on our teams to make them transparent and something that works for everybody. Because authentic leadership is not where the water is perfect, but it's where leaders are in the water with their team, they're aware of what it is, and they're doing their best to clean it up and make it a safe place to swim. And if you go to my website, I have some free resources to get started with this. If you go to drkalschmidt.com and go to my blog, when you subscribe to my blog, I send a sheet on how to identify what your culture really is. And if you look at my post on why I no longer tell people to be professional, you will also see a reflection sheet on how to reflect on what the unwritten rules of your workplace are. and I will drop my link in the chat. Here's a QR code, and I think I am at exactly 20 minutes. So I will pass it back to you, Carol. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Very thought-provoking. I love the trust and being able to speak up without fearing. That is so crucial.
Yes,
Otherwise, we're not
100%.
allowed to be ourselves. Yeah. So thank you. And I'm sure there are going to be lots of questions when we open up for Q&A. So thank you, Anna. All right. So now I'd love to introduce you. Oh, somebody's come into the room. Love to introduce you to our next speaker, who is Natalie Perez. She's an actress, faith and resilience mentor, and multiple sclerosis activist, known for her empowering talks on developing resilience through faith. Growing up in Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I was born, hey girlfriend, Natalie learned perseverance from her single mother. Moving to the US brought new challenges, including being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at age 16. Natalie's faith became her guiding light, transforming her struggles into a source of inspiration. With over 14 years of corporate experience, Natalie has turned trials into a testament to personal power. She leads diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives, embodying her mission to support and uplift others. Natalie, please take the floor.
Thank you. Do you remember this toy? The Slinky. This simple coiled spring toy. I can remember being 10 years old, spending countless hours captivated with its graceful dance down the staircase. Seemingly indestructible, it bends, it stretches, yet it always returned to its original shape. To me, the Slinky is not just a toy. It's a symbol of resilience, an embodiment of the ability to face adversity, adapt, and come back even stronger. I have a question for you. Have you ever felt like a Slinky in your own life? Stretched and tested, yet found the strength to return to original form, ready to take on the next challenge? If you can relate to this feeling, or if you've ever bounced back from a situation, I invite you to put a 1 in the chat right now. Yes, we've all been there. Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rita. As Carol mentioned, my name is Natalie Job Perez, and I am deeply passionate about leadership. To be more specific, self-leadership, the kind that shapes, inspires, transforms, and endures. Today, I'm here to share with you the importance of developing one of the essential qualities of effective self-leadership, resilience. My talk, entitled 4 Shatterproof Keys to Unleashing the Power of Resilience and Conquering Life Challenges, focuses on the fact that resiliency isn't just about learning how to tackle life challenges. It's also about growing through these challenges with grace, determination, and strength, much like the Slinky that continues its journey down each step by step, no matter how steep the staircase. This talk is for you if you've ever faced challenges that seems insurmountable, yet you found yourself searching for a path forward. It's for you if you're curious about how setbacks, failures, and hardships can actually be catalysts to transformation and success. Or if you've ever felt stretched thin like a Slinky and you are looking for motivation and methods to bounce back stronger. Also, this talk is not for you if you're looking for a quick fix or an easy answer. Resilience is about the journey, not instant solutions. If you believe that some challenges are just too big to overcome, this talk is rooted in faith and optimism and the belief that growth is possible from any situation. Or if you prefer to stay within your comfort zone, the ideas and strategies discussed here are only for those who are ready to step outside of their comfort zone and embrace change. If you're ready to step outside of your comfort zone, stay with me until the end to learn how you can dive deeper and master your own self-discipline to achieve success through this powerful trait of resilience and so much more. Resilience has played a massive role in my life. As Carol mentioned, I am a Caribbean girl. I was born and raised on the islands of Trinidad and Tobago. My family and I, not unlike many immigrant families, moved to America in hopes of a better life. Even at the tender age of 13, I had big dreams about moving to America. I truly believed that the hard times were behind me and I was going to live the life of my dreams. I was going to be a star on TV. I was going to get married to a Backstreet Boy. I was a huge fan. And I was going to have kids and the white picket fans. But at the age of 16, life gut punched me. And I truly believed it snatched my perfect little life away. It was your typical cold January morning in Brooklyn, New York. One moment, I'm roller skating with my high school friends in my gym class, feeling invincible. The next, instead of listening to the noise and chatter of my friends, I am plunged into a world where my own body became a stranger. It began in that gym class where I suddenly got the worst case of pins and needles in my leg. Do you know that feeling after sitting on your leg for too long? You pound it, you stomp it out, and usually you just try to wake your leg up to get the blood flowing again. That's basically what I was experiencing, except this feeling wasn't going away, and it lasted for days. I visited my doctors, and they couldn't figure out why I was experiencing this, but I was still able to walk and do everything as I normally would, so they sent me home. About a week later, Sunday morning, grocery shopping with my mom, as we typically did. As I mentioned, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so it was a different experience in Brooklyn. I'm now in Massachusetts, so I drive to the grocery store and drive back home. But in Brooklyn, we'll typically walk to the grocery store and walk home. On my walk home with my mom on this particular day, I'm carrying our grocery bags when all of a sudden the bags fell. I thought nothing of it. Typically, the bags will fall because we try to carry many because we didn't want to pay for a taxi to get there. But as I reached to pick up the bag, I felt as though my heart stopped because this simple motion, I could no longer do. I couldn't understand why I couldn't move my hands. And all I could remember was turning to my mom and saying to her, "Mommy, I can't move my hands." They rushed me to the hospital. I get to the doctor's office, to the emergency room in Brooklyn, New York. And as typical emergency room situations go, I'm waiting. And as I'm waiting, I slowly feel my body fading away. No one could explain what was going on until this tall, dark, and I could remember him so well, tall, dark doctor walked into that room, picked up my chart, looked at it, and changed my life in less than 5 minutes. He said, "I believe I know what this is. You have multiple sclerosis." In that moment, I felt lost, and I thought that my life was over. Who's going to love me? Remember, I had a dream of being married to a Backstreet Boy, but now I felt like I was going to be a burden not only to my current family at 16, but I would be a burden to anyone who chose to live with me, to be with me. In that moment, sitting in that room, for a second, maybe 10 minutes, I felt alone and physically paralyzed and scared. Now, I grew up trusting and believing in God. And though there are moments of doubts of how it will all work out because of what I knew of him and who he is, I have learned that all things are working for me. I am not a victim. I am a victor. Through him, I had confidence. And I had the confidence to know that this could not and will not be my story. Even as the doctor left the room with sympathy in his eyes for this young woman who was now paralyzed, I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm only 16 years old. There is way more life for me. I have to trust them. That was 2004. And here I am, over 20 years later, well, just about 20 years later. The girl who never thought it was possible is married for going on over 15 years, and I have 3 beautiful kids. A businesswoman, a mom, a wife, a worker, all the things I thought impossible for me 20 years ago. So how did I overcome, and how can you rise in the face of your challenges? Well, I created this acronym for you to use each time a situation or a circumstance causes you to doubt yourself. And that acronym is RISE. Recognize who's in control, internalize positivity, seek support, and embrace challenges. R, recognize who's in control. In the face of adversity, the first key is to recognize that while we may not control the storms, we command our sails. This is where I would like to introduce the concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt due to your experience. Neuroscience has unveiled that our brains are not fixed but malleable. Can you believe there was one time they believed that we had fixed brains? Well, the great news is science is letting us know that we can change. The brain can adapt. This plasticity allows us to reshape our thought patterns, to shift our perspective from despair to determination. It's a powerful reminder that with intention and practice, we can steer our minds towards hope and positivity, transforming challenges into stepping stones. It's not optimistic thinking, it's a scientifically backed strategy for personal transformation. I internalize positivity. As I navigated my journey, I learned to internalize positivity, not as a naive dismissal of reality, but as a powerful tool for transformation. Here, the science of neuroplasticity and positive psychology interact beautifully. Research shows that maintaining a hopeful outlook significantly impacts our ability to bounce back, essentially rewiring our brain for resilience. By consciously choosing positivity, we feed our soul a diet of encouragement, strengthen it in the process. S, seeking support. Now, in the Caribbean, we always say no man is an island. I don't know if it's everywhere else, but that's where I got it from. No man is an island. Your network is everything. And my network showed up for me big time during my diagnosis. My mom was there, my family was there to bathe me, feed me, clothe me during my hospital stay. And it was a lengthy one, about 4 months. I recently read a story by Scientific America that covered 300,000 participants across all ages. And what it reveals is that adults get a 50% boost in longevity if they have a solid social network. The benefit of friends, family, and even colleagues turns out to be just as good for your long-term survival as giving up a 15 cigarette a day smoking habit. Take a moment and think about that. That's how powerful your network is. Your support network does not have to be large. I don't have a large group of friends. Mine is small, but in it, I have found coaches to help me to navigate through difficult situations, therapists to walk me through dark moments, and inspiration leaders to remind me of my greatness and my power. There is so much strength in surrounding yourself with strong support network. We cannot and should not face this world alone. And finally, embrace challenges. You don't know what you're capable of until your limits are tested. I have experienced paralysis because of my MS diagnosis more than three times since that day. And that does not count all of the other countless ways MS affects my life. Each time, however, my resilience is strengthened. Don't give up is my mantra. My road to recovery required me to have a high level of mental toughness, and whatever you are currently facing is going to require the same of you. Despite what you think or feel, you do have the strength and the grit to make it through. During this time, I was determined to be the most hardworking patient. I pushed myself that extra mile for every exercise. If they said to me, try to pick up 1 ball, I picked up 4. If they told me go 6 steps, I went for 10. I didn't know until I was faced with the reality of being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life that I had the power within me to amaze the best of doctors and be seen as a rare case of MS. What challenges are you currently facing? What are you capable of? What are you going to be saying to yourself about yourself 1 year from now? I hope it is I made it through. 20 years ago, standing before you, I am a testament to the unbreakable spirit that resides in all of us. Married with 3 beautiful children, running a business, I realized that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. I challenge you to go from fragile to unbreakable. So in closing, define it. Let's circle back to the humble Slinky, a simple toy that in its dance down the staircase embodies the essence of resilience. Just like the Slinky, we too face moments when we are stretched to our limits, when we tumble, when we are compressed by the weight of our challenges. Yet, remember, it's in these moments that our true strength emerges. Each time we fall, we learn to rise again, more graceful and determined. Remember, with every step within you lies the power to rise above that diagnosis, rise above that illness, rise above that heartbreak, rise above that job loss, rise above the disappointment, and rise above the challenges of not feeling good enough. By recognizing you're in control, internalizing positivity, seeking support, and embracing challenges, we open ourselves up to a world of unlimited possibilities to become a better version of ourselves every day. Resiliency is just one aspect of self-leadership that is needed to take life head on. As we champion our own stories, we recognize our resilience is merely a starting point in the rich landscape of self-leadership. If you join me by going to my website, nataliejoperez.com, and signing up for my newsletter and finding ways to get in touch with me, we will explore other essential qualities that forge strong leadership qualities that empower us to rise consistently, face challenges head on, and turn obstacles into opportunities. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Natalie. And do put the RISE, the acronym RISE, do put it in the chat. I tried writing, but I couldn't keep up. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and I definitely will.
Awesome. Oh, what a challenge. What a challenge indeed. And welcome back. It gives me exceedingly great pleasure to introduce you to our third speaker, who comes all the way from the beautiful island of Ischia in Italy. And our third speaker is none other than Francesco Maiella. Now, I hope I've said that correctly.
Good evening. It's a good start anyway. It's well done. Thank you very much for that.
Okay, I'll continue introducing you. That little interlude. So who is Francesco? Well, he's a successful hotelier and restaurateur. He got on his entrepreneurial e-bike when times got tough. He's a man who has faced deeply personal tragedies. Sorry, just let someone in. Personal tragedies that tested his resilience to the limit and won through. So please say ciao to the one and only Francesco Maiella. The stage is yours.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure, and also well done to the speakers before me, because that was an amazing story, Natalie. Congratulations, and it's really my heart goes to you for the hard work. So I would like to share a screen. So please, I hope this is not the graveyard slots, but please, thumbs up if you can see my screen.
Not yet.
That works.
Yes.
Technology has not failed me tonight. That's great. That's fantastic. Well, Francesco Maiella, I'm here. So let me see. Okay. Let's look. It should be working.
Is there supposed to be sound, Francesco?
Well, good evening, everybody. So my name is Francesco, you know I am. And I know how sometimes, when you are standing in the headlights and you go, I know how rabbit sometimes feels. I feel a little bit like this tonight, because obviously it's my first time on a Zoom presentation. I love the experience of interacting with people. So please thumbs up and comments in the box if you miss me for any chance, because at the moment I've just lost my Zoom screen. So hopefully you can see me. I can see the comment box. So if you can see me okay and can hear me all right, just say yes in the comment box. Amazing. I love a heart there. Great. So I've got tonight my guardian angel. My guardian angel is Felicia. And I have to say that my life started in the beautiful island of Ischia. And it's, some of you know, it's an island in the Gulf of Naples. And it's a beautiful island. But you don't realize. I have to tell you a story. I have to tell you something that maybe some of you don't realize, but I've actually failed. I failed in life. And I failed in finding a cure for my daughter. I failed to recognize the recession in 2008 that hit our business really hard, almost destroyed us. And I failed to complete the London Marathon in under 4 hours. But you know something? Along all those failures, I've learned one thing, that you don't fail. And every time you have a failure, every time that, even when I had to say goodbye to my beautiful daughter, is something else. You have to learn that failure is just a rung up the steps. It's part of the journey. And without this journey, without those steps, I can be standing here tonight and talking to you and tell my journey. And maybe my failure, maybe my fall down, maybe my mistakes, is be able to teach somebody else that failure is just a lesson that we learn along the way. It's for us to take us to the next steps. But every time I ask myself for questions, why not me? Why me? Sorry, can I just check with everybody? You still see the slides? Because, okay, fantastic. Because I can't see them anymore, so I assume you can. But, you know, and the question I asked myself, why me? But, you know, why me? We all ask that questions. When something happened to us, something goes wrong, something fails, it's our business, a mistake, maybe it's a love story, it doesn't matter. But we ask, why me? You know, but why not me? You know, why not me? You know, because in the end of the day, it can happen to anybody. So I'm going to ask you a question, where have you failed in your journey? Think for a second, where have you failed in your journey? But, you know, I can show you too that you've not failed. It's just to run up the ladder where you will find your way to climb that ladder. You will find the falling down. I can show you the falling down is just a trip. It's just a way to your destiny where you are today. So where is, this is my beautiful island. That's just for some of you who don't know where it's from. It's reminded me that, you know, where is my little paradise, my little heart, where I want to go back to. I'm part of a fantastic, loving family. I'm the oldest of 5. So, and you know, for the first 3 of us, it's 18 months differences. My dad is going to be 84 in 3 days' time, and so it's big family. But you know, I've always been taught a lesson in my family because I was the oldest, and every time ever went wrong, it was like you had to lead by example. You know, I was the one, the oldest. And when I say you have to lead by example, even I say, what does that mean? I'm not done anything about it. I know, but you're the oldest, you have to lead by examples. You know, that has always been my motto, lead by examples. But all along the way, whenever we got a job done, when something to do, I always wonder, how can I do this better? How can I do it faster? How can I do it easier? You know, I never stand still. When I was a job to be done, I always looked for what task or work, what I can do to go better. You see, when I was young, I used to go shooting with my dad. And, you know, in the old ages, it was normal, sometimes play pigeon shooting, sometimes we went hunting, you know, but when my dad went shooting, he had the 12-bolt shotgun, I had a small gun. So you can see there's a different sizing cartridges there. So I thought, when shooting, and I thought, I have an idea. How can I go and shoot further away? How can I shoot faster? So what I did, one day I had an idea. I took the cartridges of 3 cartridges, opened them up, and from every 3 cartridges, I made 2 because I reduced I was a good shoot. I was very good at aiming. I knew exactly what I want to achieve. So what I did is I reduced the number of pellets inside and put extra gunpowder. And it was amazing. I got there, I got my gun, and I got shooting, and it was amazing. First time I tried, I got the first time, aim it, fantastic, even further away. And then I realized I had those empty cartridges. I didn't know what to do. I thought, I have an idea. I'm going to take the gunpowder from my dad's cupboard, we didn't know that, and I'm going to make even more powerful cartridges. So I made them up, and off I go. And that's what I did. I put it in, I put it in the gun, and it was amazing. Fantastic shot. And something happened at that point. You see, I learned one lesson a day. Because when I shot my 3rd shot and I was aiming, all of a sudden, it's like the world went in slow motions. I felt this heat on my face, like I've been in a fire. I suddenly realized that I felt liquid running down my face. And I looked down, all I could hear, I could see my mom from the window screaming like something had died. I could see, and I couldn't hear anything. I was like, all I could hear was this big, big buzz. And I realized, I said, something has happened. I'm not dead because I'm standing up, I still hold the gun, but all suddenly my t-shirt was all white in blood. And I didn't know what happened. You see, at that point, I thought, oh my God, I'm dying. But then suddenly the earrings start to come back up and I realized that I shot myself. I went upstairs, I looked up and I had pellets all over my face, the cartridges. And at that point, I realized that I had the fear that I died. But at the same time, when the time had passed. I realized it just was false evidence appearing real for me. But I learned something that day. I learned something really important, that in life, you have to have the right tool for everything you do. You have to be precise. And, you know, I had the idea. I knew exactly what I want to do. I want to get a better shot. I had the tools, but I didn't know the advice. I didn't seek advice. And I had the fear. And for a long time, that fear, we always carried with me, to the point that even when I went in the army, I couldn't even shoot because I had a fear that something could have happened. So you have to realize that you can change the acronyms. You know, you can change that, because you can turn around and say, okay, this is a fear. You're going to be afraid all your life to action, to take action, to move forward. But no, you have to look at the other way. And one thing I've learned is that maybe rather than call it fear, let's call it fun experiences, always remembered. You see, I always remember that experience, to the point that every time I do something, every time I learn it, I always go back to that experience. Now, you have to decide that and embrace also the possibility that when something goes wrong, make it to a funny story, because that will give you the fuel, your confidence to move forward. Now, move fast forward, I came in UK. And why I came in UK? Again, because a lesson learned. My last year at college, my mom came to school. I was really proud because I had fantastic results. But you know, I was really bad. My English was the worst subject. And my English teacher told to my mom, says, look, mom, we're going to give him the subject because he's the only one who's going to fail. He tries hard, but he will never learn English. So I came to UK to learn English. And 33 years later, I'm still here. So the teacher told my mom, he can't do it. He cannot learn English. And my subject was, I'll show you. I came in UK in 1988. From 1988, a brief summary. I moved up. I built a career in hotel management. I started in the restaurant business. I was one of the youngest general manager of hotels, dealing with a turnover of about £8 million at the age of 27. Got married, beautiful wife, got 4 amazing kids, built a business to 7 figures income, a group of 5 restaurants, and dealt with a massive recession in 2008. You see, all that is a story of our life. Things you do it. And I was single-minded, objective at building a career. But then along the way, sometimes you have what they call mishaps, you know, things that stops you in your tracks. In 2014, together with my brother, we launched Citgo Italia, the e-bike business in Italian distribution to an American company. And guess what? It was amazing because in 2014, nobody knew what e-bike was. I spent most of my time convincing people on e-bike, and it wasn't something funny. So, but Monday, 24th February, don't know if you can see the slide, in 2014, it's the day our life changed forever. You see, while I was in Italy launching the e-bike business, my daughter was taken to hospital and come back to UK on the Monday morning, and she was ill again. So we go back to hospital again. And once we were in hospital, we already been back and forth for a couple of weeks. She was sick, tonsillitis, and maybe she had temperatures, you know, and they couldn't figure out what it was. Anyway, we got back in this morning, and I was really quite annoyed because it's, you know, not possible. We come and give 2 weeks, and it's okay. We go do an MRI scan this morning, and then all of a sudden, after the MRI scan, they all called us in. And there's me, myself, and my wife. There's about 7 doctors in the room. When there's 7 doctors in the room, you start to ask yourself questions. You know, what's going on? And I don't know exactly what happened that day. I don't remember. I remember the room, I remember the people, but I don't remember any of the words they were saying. Because to me, it was just not possible. That's the day that I learned a new word. That's the day I learned a word we call palliative care. See, my daughter, our daughter that day, was diagnosed with a DIPG, a diffusing transpontine gloria. Difficult word to pronounce, still today, but I remember for the rest of my life. And I had to learn that she had the brain tumor at the back of the head in the brainstem, which is the only brain tumor that is totally inoperable, totally incurable, and affect children between the age of 3 and 5. You see, at that point, I could not believe. I could not believe, because first I asked myself the questions again, why me? Or why not me? So I started to reflect in the moment of adversity, acknowledge that we live in a place which is so fragile. I started realizing in 2014, hold on a second, we don't have a cure for cancer. We send people to the moon. We don't have a cure for cancer. We don't have a cure. And I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe. So at that point, I went in autopilot. I went solution orientated. You know, I always told that you have to start your life and you have directions in life with the solution in mind. Begin with the end in mind. My end in mind was finding a cure for Felicia. There was nothing else. None else mattered. You know, that day, I found out the cure. The next day, I closed down 2 of our business on the same day. I wouldn't have done that before, but you know, that day, nothing else matters. The only solution was the cure for my daughter. I couldn't care the consequences of closing down the businesses. That was not in my rhythm at that moment. I went in solution mode. All I did was every single day, I started to read white papers. I started to find, how do I find the solution to my daughter? I could not believe there's no possible. I thought outdoors would be the first one to do that. So first things, I start, number 1, identify the challenge. How to identify the challenge? Well, diffusing dreams pontine glomy is a brain tumor, is brain stems, is in the pons, and is responsible for everything we do, from breathing, eating, sleeping, everything at all. So it's the only tumor that kills you while you're still alive. You can feel everything. And affects a 3-year-old child. And how do you deal with that? How do you ever deal with that? See, the doctor told us that my daughter will survive a maximum 90 days. Our daughter lived for 2 years. For 2 years. Because I didn't follow their advice. Why didn't I follow their advice? Because they were wrong? No, because doctors have got a toolbox. They have to deal with the toolbox. They have a tool, they have a degree, they learn the skill, and they skill a skill. And they have 3 things to deal with. You know, they go to war to fight cancer, and they have chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery. But it's exactly the same. It's like going to war today, and you go to war with a knife and a gun. When the other people have got, you know, bombs and whatever. Cancer is going to be dealt with everything. What do we eat? Where do we live? What do we breathe? Everything affects us. So my first challenge was identifying it. The second, I started research. I started to look what else can be there. I started to look at the diet, at the herbal, at the eating, and the environment, what I cook. I got rid of my microwave from the house. We got rid of certain things that we thought they didn't work. People told me, it's not going to make a difference. It made a difference for my daughter's life. They want to give my daughter chemotherapy because it's told it's the gold standard for this type of tumor. There was no evidence that showed the chemotherapy get to the blood-brain barrier in this type of tumor. No evidence at all. But they were pumping in chemotherapy to every single standard procedures. I refused. I was put on notice by the consultant. Well, if you do that, I'm going to write to you because you put your life at risk. Otherwise, my daughter's life. But what was a choice? And then 6 months later, she comes to me and says, oh, Mr. Mazzelli, you were right. The gold standard is no longer to give you chemotherapy because it's shown it's not working. What would you have done in my place? What I felt like it was to tell you, pick up a chair and smash your heads in. But I didn't do that because that's not polite, isn't it? So I carried on my research. I carried on believing what I was right. And I start to identify what is it. So we identify the solutions, we identify the challenge, we do the research, and we do the planning. You know, at that moment, I realized that everything I've done in life since I was little, I've done always the same things. But I didn't realize that that was my way to find a way forward. You see, by that time, all I focused on was finding a solution. And again, like working all my life before, I was working all the time for my family, but not spending time with my family. Then I spent all my time with finding a cure for my daughter and not spending time with my daughter because I was flying all over the place. I was going to Israel, US, Italy, Czech Republic, because I just could not let it rest. That was a possible and not finding a cure. So I did not know, but at that time, what I now call the third method was born, because you identify the challenge, you do the research, you do the planning, and then it's the actions. My action maybe did not lead to my result, but that doesn't stop me to do it next time. Now, who am I today? Where am I today? I'm a result of what's happened so far. I'm a family man, yes. I've run 2 marathons at the age of 50. Never ran a mile in my life. Am I happy? No, I'm not happy because I wanted to finish them under 4 hours, and I finished one under 5 hours and one under 6 hours. I'm not happy about that. Do I give up? Maybe for the time being, I will run another one. I've set up a business, bikes. I started an e-bike business. I knew nothing about it. But you see, I've learned one thing, that in life, the journey is not the end. And I'll tell you a little story. Just before one of my journey with my daughter was Felicia. At that time, she wasn't well. She couldn't see anymore, you see. And we was find this another doctor in Germany that there was a chance that anti-immunotherapy would work. I tried everything else, you know, and I think even most probably for my own, I wanted to try the other one. So I said to her, I don't want to go to Germany. I said to my daughter, says, Felicia, what do you think? Shall we go to Germany? She asked me a question. Says, Daddy, does he have the magic medicine? I said, I don't know. I think he does. She said, okay, let's go then. No question asked. She couldn't see. She said, let's go. See, that journey was the beginning for me that it was really heart-wrenching. I set up in the car, we booked the hotel, and we drive. I got to the petrol station, I filled the car, through Hull, the ferry. I got to Hull, and I got to get my ticket. The lady there says, can I see your credit cards, please? I forgot my credit cards at the petrol stations. I couldn't believe it. But I thought, okay, I had another credit cards, my Italian credit cards, at 2 days before it would expire. There was 500 euro on that card. I said, it doesn't matter. I said, we go. So we got on the ferry, got on the other end. I rang a couple of friends. I said, look, I have a problem with these situations. Can you put some money in my card? No problem, put the money in the card. But my card would expire in 2 days. Even with the money in, I couldn't have used it. Anyway, go to Germany. Unfortunately, when I went to Germany, my daughter was taken very ill and was taken to the local hospital. So I go to hospital. And one thing happened at the hospital was that my daughter was taken in intensive care. And as she was in intensive care, our doctor, we spent the first night in hospital. The next morning, the doctor called us and says, look, we'll call you across. We're going to take your daughter off life support this morning. What's that big about? She's going to die. She's well. I want to show you something. So he showed the MRI scan, which by now I knew them very well. And she said to me, she said, I have to tell you, I have no idea why your daughter is still alive, because we've never seen an MRI scan like this. Her brain was riddled with tumors, not just one, dozens, in the space less than 6 months. And she said to me, I said, well, if you're going to take the tube off, what's going to happen? She said, well, she's been breathing on her own all night. The machine tells she's not been breathing on machines. So as soon as she took the respirator off, I thought the first thing says that they cannot sing the song. I said, with the tube in my mouth, I could not sing. She used to love to sing. So I will tell you one thing. If that teaches me something, that you don't need to have a vision, you know, to see future. You can see without eyesight. And you don't want to die with the music still in you. So the next pastor journey, maybe meeting me today, it's maybe a message, I don't know. But remember that every time you have a step along the way, it's just another rank up the ladder to your success. So next part of your journey, maybe a short part, maybe a long one. But remember one thing, every day, always bring new opportunity. Every day, the sun will rise from the east. So don't give up, don't give in. And most importantly, don't die with the music still in you. And remember, so believe it.
Have you finished, Francesco? Francesco?
Thank you, everybody.
Ah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Natalie says it, don't die with the music inside of you. Absolutely. But what a journey.
Yes, it's been a journey.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing with us, Francesco.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking here today. And if that helps anybody, and feel free to get in touch, guys, because life is an experience. And if any of my knowledge, any of my experience can help anybody, even one person, that makes such a difference.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Deep breath. Sorry. Yes. And now, Jose Angel Pereira, it's your turn, our final guest speaker of the evening.
Wow.
I know, I'm trying to get myself. Jose Pereira, a former oil company executive with 35 years of experience, endured 1,775 days of unjust captivity in Venezuela as part of the Citgo Citgo, detained solely for his American nationality. He was held from November 21st, 2017 to October 1st, 2022. Upon his return, Jose reunited with his family, authored his memoir, and became a leadership and resilience coach and speaker. He advocates for Americans unlawfully detained abroad and collaborates with Bring Our Families Home to shape protocols for the return of American hostages. And Jose, I know a bit of your story, and I can't wait to hear you share it and for the audience to hear it. So I yield the floor to you, Jose. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Carol. By the way, I have been hearing all the speeches, and wow, all the speeches are amazing. Francesco, your stories, I was having here goosebumps, and also hearing Natalie and Hannah, all those speeches have been really wonderful. In all those speeches, I found something that really for me is something really so interesting, because even everybody has different journeys, different stories, but the common of the story is the resilience, that force inside you that makes you endure any situation in life. And that is exactly my story. And when I heard, for example, Natalie talking about that a leader has to be a true resilient guy, that's exactly what I always, I'm talking about it. That's why I decided to become a leadership and resilience coach, because the people that doesn't know me, they are in this audio, or maybe can be hearing this recording after. As Carol mentioned, I did my career in the oil and gas. I began very early in my age, because I'm Venezuelan born, and my father also, he was an oil and gas worker. And by the way, my grandfather too. So my son also is a oil and gas. So we are like 4 generations of oil and gas people that we began in Venezuela in the 70s, 70s, 60s, 80s, was one of the wealthiest countries of Latin America. That's why we received a lot of immigration, a lot of Italian immigration. So I began my career there in 1985. Okay, did my long career in the international sector. And at some point, some years ago, some decade ago, more than a decade ago, I was transferred here to the US. I live today in Houston, and became part of the Citgo Petroleum staff. Citgo Petroleum belongs to PDVSA, that is the Venezuelan oil company. So I came here to the US as an expat from Venezuela, assigned to that company. And I continued, finalized my career, and I became at the end the CEO of the company. So in 2017, I was the CEO of that company. And well, I was living like my perfect life, the pinnacle of my career after more than 3 decades working there. But the things between Venezuela and the US were not going good. Maybe the people are not so familiar, but Venezuela today, unfortunately, has a communist regime there. And the situation in Venezuela in the last more than 15 years has been deteriorated very fastly. Today, Venezuela has a big diaspora all over the world. More than 8 million people have left the country because they were starving. So the situation began to go very bad, and the administration that was here in the US decided to try to throw away that government and begin to impose sanctions to the government and to the country. So the situation began to be really bad. And even that, I was not directly affected, but I was working at a company that belonged to Venezuela, and I didn't feel comfortable. So I talked with my wife, and I decided to get retired. So I went asked my boss that accept my retirement, because I was, thinking to become a consultant and do a new turn in my life. And back and forward, he accepted, and I came back here to the US, and I was, wow, okay, ready to retire, retirement mode. November it was October by that time. November was 1 month, Thanksgiving, my sons were coming, December, going to vacation, January, get retired. So I begin to think all my plans in my life, because this is what normal people do, plan their life. The problem that happened is sometimes you make plans that never happen. And that was what happened to me. So now I'm in October here in the US, and I flew back and came to a big meeting that we had here in Citgo Petroleum every year. And in the closing of the meeting, there's a guy giving a motivational speaker. Was a guy called Captain Phillips. That there was a famous movie that Tom Hanks did. Well, the real Captain Phillips was the guy talking there. And when he finalized his speech, he sat down beside me. I said, man, what a journey you went through. And the guy told me that the journey was even worse, that the reality was even worse than the movie. But he told me that all of us has inside us an inner force that comes from our connection with God, that you can unleash that unbreakable spirit that everybody has inside. So I got thinking on that. What I didn't realize that thought, I will need to use it the next month. So the next month, now I'm in December 2017. I went to go to a movie with my wife. Was in the middle of the world premiere of Superman. Big fan of DC Superman. So I'm there taking dinner with a scotch with my wife, and my phone began to ring. And it began to ring and ring and ring and ring. I said, hey, somebody is insisting in the call, because adversity always comes with a call. So now that was my adversity, and that phone call was my adversity. So when I received the phone call, was my boss began to yell to me that why I was not taking the call. So I told him, well, I was in a movie. And he said, you have to come tomorrow to Caracas. There's going to be a big meeting here. All these things with the sanctions, we need to know how we're going to handle this. We were revamping a refinery in Aruba. You had to make the presentation of how the status of that refinery, how it's going to be covered during this period, etc. So next day, I'm flying to Caracas. make the presentation. I did my presentation. And the presentation was very fine. It was a standing ovation. And I was thinking,